YouTube. Good afternoon, good evening. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I am your favorite realtor, Joshua Grace, checking in from the beautiful city of Cincinnati, Ohio. So first, thank you all for tuning in. This is part 2 of 2 for closing calls. So obviously, if you're in the market or preparing yourself to buy your first property or even your next property, take a look at the first video on closing costs. I really broke down some of the key components or key costs to actually closing costs in general. So, whether it's title, whether it's mortgage, whether it's, appraisal, whether it's inspection, etc. I included a lot of insight on those aspects. I think just to kind of sum that up and kind of touch on a few additional points on this video that can definitely help you out as you do continue to prepare and embark upon that next step, buying your next property. So understand closing costs is just a natural part of the home buying, home investing process. So it's not really too many ways around that, and that's okay, because quite honestly, you want that property to be in a position where you can take over ownership in a more organic and seamless process. You don't ever want to buy a house and it has liens or clouds on the title, etc. So you're really, the best way I always say, look at it as you're investing in yourself, but you're investing to protect yourself with that property. So closing costs, yeah, obviously it's going to cost you some money, but it's for your good. So again, if you have not taken a look at that first video, feel free to check that one out. Again, this is part 2 of 2. So I want to cover a couple things in addition to the first video, right? So I think the biggest rule of thumb to really take and keep with you just throughout the process in general, for closing costs, you're looking at, on average, and keep in mind, average is an average. It could be a little less, it could be a little more, but you're looking at about 3% of that home's purchase price for your closing costs. So just for simple math, if you have a $100,000 home, you can expect to pay roughly $3,000 for closing costs. Now again, closing costs and down payment are 2 separate amounts. So don't get the 2 confused. So you're still gonna have to put your down payment, but you're also gonna have closing costs. So those are 2 separate expenses. So don't confuse the 2. Down payment for the loan, for the property, and then closing costs, 2 separate entities. So basically with those closing costs, again, on average, you can expect about 3%. I've seen up to 5.5%, but I've seen as low as 2% as well. So it really just depends. But again, just a good rule of thumb, just for simple mathematics, if you're looking at a $100,000 home and you're purchasing that, expect to bring at least $3,000 to the closing table. Now, with that said, I think these are a few points I really want to leave you with today. There is a way that you can still close on the property and not necessarily have to put forth all the money for closing costs at the time. There's a way that you can you'll still have to pay it, but you can save yourself some capital on hand, keep some cash in the bank by taking an alternative route that will still allow you to close on the property. So I won't disclose all my secrets and all my secret sauce, so to speak, but there is a way kind of around that. I've been helping my clients for years, for those who need to take that alternative route. I've been helping them to really circumvent putting forth additional capital that maybe they need to hold on to for moving expenses or just other expenses. So again, I'm very well versed in that capacity, but there is a way around that. So again, if you're in the market, if you're looking, just know, ask your realtor that. Say, hey, how can I save some capital cash on hand and still close on this? How can I, take an alternative route to still get to the closing table and walk out with the keys? So that's 1. 2, I think this is very important to say and really reiterate. So in real estate and life in general, everything is negotiable. Now, I would never encourage someone to be combative, but you have every right to vet out your mortgage lender. You have every right to vet out your title company. You have every right to ask what their fees, what their costs are. Is that their best fee or best cost I've seen situations where we've had certain things waived, we received certain discounts on certain services, certain things have kind of, if you will, been comped. Not saying that every title company or every mortgage company will do that, but I have seen it, and I've seen it more than once. So again, you always want to know where you're spending your money, so it's perfectly fine to ask those questions, man. You always want to, if something doesn't feel right with you, or you feel you're being overcharged, or you feel maybe something's just outlandishly expensive, you can ask. You can ask your agent, you can ask the entity, whether it's title or mortgage, that's actually charging you for that. You can ask. So again, everything's negotiable. Don't ever forget that, especially in real estate. Everything is negotiable, and that includes the sales price as well. So keep that in mind. And then just really the third point, as you get to the closing table and you pay your closing costs, obviously it's important to understand down to the penny really where your money's going. But just understand there's to be expected certain things in real estate. So if you feel or you would like to ask your agent to ask said seller on that property if they would provide funds or even pay your closing costs, that's a question you should be asking first and foremost. Now, they don't have to. They can easily say, no, we're not going to do that. That's fine. Can you pay a portion? So expect no's in real estate, but just understand for every no, there's a yes somewhere. So again, if you're someone who really wants to save as much cash capital as possible, you want to keep as much money in the bank, feel free by all means, ask that seller, even in this market. We're in, October 2024. You still have sellers, you still have builders who are willing to pay closing costs. So don't ever be afraid or timid or second guess yourself. If you want to ask, in fact, I encourage you to ask, will the sellers pay closing costs? Let's put that in the contract. If an agent is telling you otherwise, you may want to reevaluate working with that agent, but that's definitely a fair question, fair game. So just keep that in mind. So again, average closing costs, about 3%, give and take. Again, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but on average, you can expect to pay about 3% for closing costs. There's a way that you can save yourself some money at the closing table on your closing costs and still be able to close without necessarily putting as much capital up front. So that's 2. And then 3, everything's negotiable, so ask. Ask. You'll get a no for every question you don't ask, right? So don't ever be afraid to ask a seller or a builder to pay your closing costs. So again, I hope this video really helps. If you have any additional questions, as always, feel free to reach out. 513-304-2416. I am here in the beautiful city of Cincinnati. Thank you.